Welcome back to Approved AF, the licensing podcast where we talk all things mortgage licensing, growth, and staying compliant without the chaos. I'm your host, Catalina Stepanov, and today we are diving into the other side of licensing that most brokers forget about: Secretary of State compliance. If you've ever thought, my NMLS license is active, I must be good to go, then this episode is for you. I'm joined by Erika Reinhofer, our Senior Vice President of Business Intelligence and Analytics at LicensingStore.com, to talk about what happens when your SOS registration lapses, why your registered agent actually matters, and how growing too fast could leave you exposed. If you're trying to build a multi-state mortgage biz the right way, then this is a must listen. Let's jump in. Hey, Erika, welcome back to Approved AF.
Hey, Catalina.
You have been with Licensing Store for a few years now. You've seen all kinds of companies come through. Tell us a little bit about how your role impacts the success of companies when it comes to the Secretary of State reports.
Yeah, so we not only help companies get registered with the Secretary of State departments in all of the 50 states, we also help them maintain those registrations. So that includes updating addresses, updating any manager or member or director charts, things like that, and maintaining your annual reports and annual payment requirements with those annual registration fees.
Most mortgage owners, in my opinion, don't even really monitor or know about the Secretary of State side of things. They usually don't monitor it until something is due or past due. Why is that such a costly mindset?
The reason that ends up costing them in the long run is because that adds up on the end of late fees. So late fees start accruing typically it's by state. Some states don't charge late fees, but they do just kind of start accruing extra service fees. While other states start charging upwards of a $400 late fee, such as Florida. So it's really important to maintain these registrations and make sure that we're getting the annual reports filed on time rather than late.
So for somebody who is brand new and they're just kicking off their mortgage company business, what exactly is a Secretary of State report, and why is that different than an NMLS report?
So the Secretary of State registrations have to come after your federal registration. So after you get your EIN and everything for the company, you have to register on the state level as well. So wherever your company is formed, that's the domestic state. And then if you want to conduct any business outside of that state, you need to also register with those states. Essentially, registering with each Secretary of State department registers your name, your business name, so that no other business can take that name in that state. And it also gives the state notice that you will be conducting business within their state lines so that they can forward any service of process things to you. If anything comes up, they know who to contact through those Secretary of State registrations.
So, for example, I'm a company. I am located in Florida, and I've formed my company, my domestic formation, in Florida. But I'm now looking to get licensed in Georgia and South Carolina and North Carolina. I need to register with each one of those Secretary of States.
Correct. Before you can even get your mortgage license in any of those states, you have to prove that you have registered with the Secretary of State in order to show that you have, essentially, it's giving your business the right to conduct business in the state.
And so after you get licensed in those states, maintaining a good standing requires you to file Secretary of State annual reports.
Correct. You have to re-register every year. A lot of times it's just a registration fee that they collect and ensure that none of your business information has changed over the course of the year. Verify your address, again, your members, managers, directors, things like that. But if your registration does ever lapse and you miss that registration fee, in that time of the lapse, your business is not authorized to conduct business in the state and must cease all operations within those state lines. So if you miss a registration fee or you miss a renewal in a state, it automatically impacts your ability to do business within that state.
Yeah, but like I could still close a loan though, right?
No, unfortunately, everything has to halt once that registration essentially lapses. Everything within that state has to stop.
In order to stay compliant, you must stay ahead of the filing due dates and pay the filing fees for each of the Secretary of States.
Yeah, and it's better to get ahead of those fees because a lot of times, like I said, the fees will compound and you'll end up with more service fees or higher late fees rather than if you file earlier.
Do those reports typically come on a set deadline? Say like July 1st, all of the Secretary of State reports are due.
No, unfortunately, it can't be that easy. It has its own rules and regulations, as with everything else. So some states, they just go by your qualification date. So the date that you registered in that state is the same date that you have to renew every year, which makes sense. Other states, it is, like you said, a set date every year on March 1st. That's when you have to renew. States like Florida have that. But other states are, within 90 days of the anniversary month of your registration or something like that. But all of this is public information available to you once you register your company. It is available to see on the Secretary of State websites when you search up your company.
Very good. What have you seen are the most common issues that companies run into, especially those going through their first Secretary of State renewal season?
A lot of things are just not maintaining the company record, such as the address changes, things like that. Many people forget to update all of the addresses on each Secretary of State registration. It is a timely, feat to sit down and go through and amend each Secretary of State filing, especially if you have quite a few state licenses. But unfortunately, they do check that on the NMLS. They will post deficiencies and deadlines for you to get those updates. And again, they will end up posting some fees for the late notice and the late change. So that's one thing that we see many times. Another thing is, again, just not maintaining them, not making sure that they're staying renewed and registered and in good standing. Many of our clients are in bad standing when they come to us and don't even know. So that's something that it doesn't automatically trigger something within the state to let you know. It is your responsibility to check and maintain your company's registration within each state.
Kind of going off of that, do you have a example of a client who missed something? Maybe it was something small, but that it ended up running into a bigger impact for them, and then maybe they came to us for assistance?
Yeah, we've had clients in the past come to us with incorrect registrations where they registered as a domestic company in Illinois or something like that, but they're actually based in California. So they need to change that registration from domestic to foreign so that they can get the proper documentation and tax forms and all of that stuff. So we do assist with conversions and things like that. We've also had companies come to us that, come and say that they want a Virginia license. And so we go to register them in Virginia, and they've actually been registered in Virginia back since 2018. So then they have to kind of go back and pay all of those, renewal fees and back taxes and things like that to get back in good standing. So there are a lot of cases of people essentially, like I said, just not maintaining, not knowing that they need to keep an eye on these things. A lot of people just think that once they're registered, they're good to go.
We didn't really talk about it, but in part of registering as a foreign entity in other states, a aspect to that registration is a registered agent needing to be listed. Can you elaborate as to what a registered agent is and does?
Yeah. So on any state registration, you have to appoint a registered agent. This individual has to reside within that state and essentially serve as your company's um, person and point of contact for that state. So again, if I'm registered as a company in California, And I have my brother living in California serving as my registered agent. When California has an issue with my company and they look up my company, it's going to list my brother as a point of contact. And so they'll know who to get in contact with the company. Now, obviously, a lot of companies don't have miscellaneous people all over the states and all over the country. So, registered agent companies are available. They do have people all over the country. So, they serve as your registered agent in all of the states that you need them to or want them to. So then that is a company that maintains all of your registrations. They're going to keep track of any mail that comes through, any service of process, tax forms, anything that comes from the state is going to go to that company since they're listed as the registered agent. And then they will turn around and feed that information to you.
That's excellent. Just, pointing out with Licensing Store, we have a preferred provider as a registered agent, just trying to streamline the process for people that use our services. And you can find more information about that in our show notes. But for, everybody else, what are some misunderstandings about registered agents, annual reports, or like corporate status changes that get people into trouble?
So one another thing with the registered agent, much like your registration with the states, is that you do have to pay the renewal fees. So with these people, if you have a brother living in the states willing to handle your mail for free, that's great. If not, registered agent companies obviously do charge a fee. So you do have to renew your registered agent every year. If your payment to the registered agent lapses, what they end up doing is withdrawing as agent for your company, and your company then goes unrepresented in the state, which drops you again out of good standing. So it's also really important to keep up with those payments, make sure your registered agent is active, the address is correct, all of that stuff, because, like I said, all the mail is going to go to that address that's listed, making sure that that address is correct. And now that we're kind of talking about it, when you do register, you do differentiate between your principal office address and your registered agent address. So even though you have a principal office in whatever state it may be, the registered agent address always has to be within that state. So the registration will not let you proceed if your registered agent address is not within that state. So the registered agent address is what the state actually uses to get in contact. Another thing on the Secretary of State side that's really important to maintain with your registered agent is, like I said, address changes. Sometimes registered agents commercially, they'll move offices, they'll change suite numbers, things like that. It's obviously really important to make sure that that's maintained too. Same thing. Make sure you're getting your mail, make sure you're getting all of your service of process and things like that. You won't drop out of good standing and you'll be able to keep conducting business.
Have you seen any issues with someone using a registered agent who maybe isn't like a corporate company, but like rather like their brother, their mom, and missing important documents?
Yes. And a lot of times this will happen because the registered agent address is just a PO box or things like that. Again, we're only human. Things get missed, things get forgotten. Everybody has a big pile of mail at the end of their counter. Sometimes you forget that the one thing under the Costco magazine is a little bit important. So we have seen that, these individuals, when they are appointed, they kind of forget that they're appointed, or, they forget that, oh, I moved 3 months ago and I didn't tell you, now I haven't been getting mail. Sorry. So there is risk obviously associated with having an individual as a registered agent as opposed to the commercial registered agent. There's a little bit more security there. Just because, like I said, it's a big conglomerate that's backing you rather than just your brother.
Mm-hmm. Kind of switching gears a little bit, when in your experience, as you've helped a lot of companies grow and expand, and you've kind of seen them go from one state to multi-state entities, what how do you how do things change when a company is expanding that fast?
Obviously, when you expand with that many states and that quickly, there's much more to maintain than just the initial workload. With these maintenance things, you don't obviously think about when you're doing your license application, like, oh, I also need to make sure that I'm maintaining my registered agent for this new state. I also need to make sure that I'm maintaining my Secretary of State registration for this state and things like that. So a lot of times these things kind of just get set on the back burner since they are only annual requirements and it's not something that comes up a lot. It's kind of one of those out of sight, out of mind things. So when the reminders come through, it kind of looks like spam. Um, so as we add more states to that mix, more things are available to slip through the cracks. It's just way more to balance, way more to manage. And again, just at the end of the day, it's just more states and state specific requirements to maintain.
Oh, so we've talked about like maintaining proper information with the Secretary of State reports, but what is one area of Secretary of State compliance that companies tend to forget as they grow into more states? Like once they go from like one state to 50 states, I'm thinking some of our bigger companies, what do they tend to forget or miss when it comes to, you know, keeping things updated?
I think one thing that often gets forgotten or missed is when you withdraw or surrender one of your licenses in order and you're no longer planning to conduct business in that state. A lot of people forget to withdraw their Secretary of State registrations. So that ends up either lapsing or just continuing to accrue late fees. A lot of states do require you to withdraw from the Secretary of State first before they'll approve your license withdrawal or termination. But yeah, many times clients will just kind of keep paying the registered agent and keep paying the state fees, not really putting two and two together that, oh, I'm not conducting business in this state. I don't need to maintain this registration. Outside of that, it's really just the annual maintenance reports. Again, since it is just once a year for each state, they tend to get missed. They don't all have the same due dates. They don't all have the same, you know, fee amounts, requirements, confirmation, language, all of that stuff. Some states require a supplemental tax report as well. So for those ones, obviously, you got to get your CPA involved. So it's just, again, it's best to stay on top of these and stay ahead of them just so that day of you're not scrambling to complete the report and then at the end find out that now there's something tax related and you got to call your tax guy too. So
Yeah, that would kind of suck. Uh, you actually made a very, very good point, and that's there are sometimes a company will drop a license and not withdraw from the Secretary of State. But on the opposite end of the spectrum, we have companies that are looking to expand into other states. They haven't yet applied for those licenses in the NMLS, but they've registered at the Secretary of State level, and they might be going a full year before they've locked in their name, right? They've locked in their name, they've got a registered agent, and they're in good standing in all of these states with plans to apply for a license, but they haven't gotten to it yet, and they miss a Secretary of State renewal period because they're not licensed in there. Um, what does somebody do if that happens? Is it they're getting a notice of some kind or just paying a late fee and getting back into good standing?
yeah, typically states do send late fee and notices and things like that in the mail. They'll also send you or your registered agent notices about the annual report being due about 2 months in advance. So they send it snail mail, but they do send you notices starting from, relatively close to the annual reporting requirement. So when those come through, a lot of times we do get questions about, we aren't even licensed in this state yet. Why do we have to pay the registration fee and things like that? But again, like you said, it's not a fee to, maintain your licensure. It's a fee that maintains your ability to conduct business in the state. And like you mentioned, it reserves the name. So in the time that, California, for example, takes about a whole year to come back around and approve your license. So by that time, you probably already had to renew with the Secretary of State. But if you waited until the very last minute and then registered, lo and behold, you go to register and somebody took your company name. And so now you have to have a different trade name in California in order to conduct business because your name is not no longer available. So that definitely does come up, and that we do unfortunately have to pay that registration fee, keep it renewed, keep your company in good standing just because we don't know when the license is going to be approved. On the other side, though, we also have clients that come, they want to get a certain license. We give them the requirements. They say, great, we're on our way. We're doing great. Plane is on its way cruising. And then all of a sudden, mid-flight, we realize, oh, we actually don't have the capital for that the state requires. We're not going to move forward with this license anymore. That's great, but we're already mid-flight. We've already registered you with the Secretary of State and began gathering documents and stuff. So when we end that flight, we need to go back and withdraw you from the Secretary of State so that you don't find out 1 year later that you have to pay $300 to maintain your registration that you weren't even using in the first place.
Yep, very good point. Uh, so we've worked with companies, both big and small, but we've seen some people come to us as just an absolute hot mess, Secretary of State level and reporting compliance wise. But have we ever experienced somebody who kind of had things organized when they came to us? And if they did, what was that technique that was successful for them? Just maintaining those notices.
Yeah, most people that come to us and that actually have it together and have all of their, registrations all straightened out and in good standing, good to go, are just using plain old Excel. So that's kind of what I use on my end too, just to make sure that nothing's really getting missed. Everything's getting filed on time. That way you can see what states you're working with, what the deadlines are. Again, like I said, all of the deadlines and everything, it is public information when you search for your company. So when you look up your company within the Secretary of State business search, it tells you when the next renewal is due. So then you can put a note in your calendar or, in your Excel sheet, wherever it may be. Just make sure that you put a note with a 1 week warning of these notices so that we know ahead of time to get that filed by the deadline well before the deadline even comes, it goes.
So it doesn't need to be complex. It doesn't need to be expensive. It just needs to be maintained. And if you're a small shop, or if you are a growing shop and you are moving 1,000,000 miles a minute in various different directions, it can get missed. So ensure that somebody has eyes on it so that it doesn't.
Right. Yep.
What would a mortgage company be doing right now to prepare for the next filing season, especially if they've grown since last year?
Just getting things organized. Like I said, making sure you're keeping track of what states you're actually registered in, when that registration became active, making sure that you're keeping your certificates of good standing file just in case one of the licenses or licensing agencies request it. Things like that, just making sure that you're organized. At the end of the day, that's really what's going to save any company and anyone, really, just mentally. That's the only way that we can keep going.
For Secretary of State, are they flat fees or are they based off of loan volume or does it depend?
The Secretary of State, nothing has to do with your loan volume. This is just general business. Nothing has to do with mortgage. You have to register it just as a plain company. So none of these reports are technically real reports based on any loan volume. Like I said before, they're kind of just renewal, like registration reports, verifying that your address hasn't changed. None of the information has changed. Here's your renewal fee. And then you can keep on conducting business. Each state is a different fee, and then that fee also differs between an LLC and a corporation. So make sure we're filing the correct report for our business type. But yeah, each state has a different fee, but they are just flat fees across the board.
That's actually really important, is making sure that you pull up the right entity type and file the correct report. That's a really good takeaway. If you could tell a mortgage company one thing about the Secretary of State reports that would help them to make sure that they stay in good standing for the long haul, what would that be?
Make note of the due date. Like I said before, the annual report due date is public information. Just search up your business. It will let you know when your next annual report or annual renewal is due. and make a note in your calendar, in your phone calendar, and your email calendar. Schedule an email to be sent to you as a reminder. Just remember to get that annual renewal filed, and that will keep your company in good standing.
And if you miss it, you're going to be paying for it.
Indeed. For example, Florida, the annual report was $135, and now with the late fee, it is $575.
Oh, ouch.
Oh, you're just 24 hours late just because you don't want to pay the fee right now, because you will end up just paying more in the end. So
Oh, that's
get those reports filed.
Where can listeners go to learn more about what reports that they're responsible for, or even get a check on their current status of things?
Yeah. It's actually really easy to find, and most of my Google search history is proof of this. But whatever state you are registered in, if you just look up, for example, I'm registered in Georgia. I want to see what my registration in Georgia looks like. If you put into the Google search bar GASOS business search, that will bring up the Georgia Secretary of State business search, and you can click the link, search up your business, and all of the business information will be there. Most states do have online portals, and it's very easy for you to just go in, manage your business, make sure everything's up to date. If anything needs to be amended, you can do it right online. Other states, there are paper forms. There are not as many states anymore. They are migrating to online systems, but it is state specific. So just make sure that you hit up Google, search up the state you're looking at, and go from there.
On the Secretary of State websites, are there any other things that people can do for their business at that site besides an annual report?
Yeah, like I said, online, most states do have online portals from which you can search to see if, for example, you want to use a DBA or a doing business as name, and add that to your license. You can search to see if that name is actually available in the state. From there, you can also amend anything from your business. So anything that needs to be updated from your address to your officers' addresses, things like that, will also be able to be changed online. Some states even let you convert from an LLC to an Inc. or from an Inc. to an LLC online, while others, that is just a paper form. So when in doubt, you can give the Secretaries of State a call. They are actually pretty easy to get a hold of to find the correct form. But if you do actually find the incorrect form or file the incorrect thing online, they do send you a rejection notice, let you know, hey, your funds have been refunded, and here's the correct form that you need to get done in order to get, whatever amendment you're trying to file filed.
Awesome. Yeah, those are extremely helpful tips. If anybody wants more information on your services and how to get a hold of you, what is the best way for them to find you?
My name is Erika. I work for LicensingStore. My email is erika@licensingstore.com. You can also give me a call at 248-663-3094. I do all of the Secretary of State reports and stuff for our clients. So if you have any questions, feel free to give me a call.
Thank you so much, Erika.
Thanks, Catalina.
All right, that's a wrap on today's episode. If this conversation had you sweating a little or nodding your head, then you already know why staying ahead of your Secretary of State filings is a non-negotiable. Want help keeping this all straight? That's exactly why LicensingStore created the Monthly Licensing Management Program, or as we lovingly refer to it, MLMP, to handle the boring yet critical stuff before it becomes a problem. You can find links to our registered agent providers and MLMP information in the show notes. Don't forget to follow or subscribe so you don't miss another episode. And if you got value out of this one, share it with a fellow mortgage professional who needs to hear it. Until next time, stay licensed, stay compliant, and stay approved AF.